Question Pro. Today we have a pretty exciting episode. Thank you guys so much for joining us. This one is called Using Complex Surveys to Determine Product Pricing. Today I am joined by my wonderful co-hosts. As always, we have Dan Fleetwood and Crystal Weiss. Dan, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Dan Fleetwood. I'm the president of Research and Insights here at Question Pro, and I'm excited to be here.
Yay. And I'm Crystal Weiss. I'm the director of global marketing here at Question Pro, and I'm always here, whether I'm excited to be here or not.
I mean, you just gave like 2 peace signs, so you know.
Hey, there you go.
Hey.
Alrighty, so for this particular episode, it's a little bit more complex, I would say. It's in the title, complex is in it. It's just talking about pricing, how big of a deal it is when it comes to products or any kind of service that you might or might not provide, and how surveys can play its part in how you can determine pricing.
Yeah.
So today we're going to be figuring out what types of surveys we can conduct, and also how we can understand how much customers are willing to pay, what's kind of pushing that line, what's kind of underselling yourself, all that good stuff. I think it's going to be a pretty valuable episode for anyone that's, starting out in business or obviously has their own empire already. But I don't know, maybe they can learn a thing or two. We'll see.
I know. I'm curious if Dan knows of any companies that used to just put prices on things and then later came back and did pricing research, because I just imagine that there are a lot of companies that are just like, oh, well, they charge this much, so we'll charge this much.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I don't know of any like specific examples like that where someone charged like $10 and they should have been charging 25 or whatever. But there is a lot that goes into pricing research, and there's experts for everything, and pricing is no different. So it is an art, I think, a little bit, but it's also a little bit economics, like between how much are you buying something for and how much can you sell it. Obviously, if you're selling it for less than you're buying it for, you're not making a profit. So there's a little bit of that too. So.
Some of the common sense.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's start talking about some of the complex surveys that exist out there. So unlike simple questionnaires, complex surveys are used for advanced techniques to gather detailed and reliable data. So some of the methods that work for this are conjoint analysis, the Van Westendorp price sensitivity meter, and the Garber-Granger pricing method. Now, the one that I am most familiar with is probably conjoint analysis, because I did a video of that on my TikTok page, or our TikTok page. Just kind of a bite-sized content, very surface level information on that. But do you guys have any ideas of how maybe these things have been applied in the past, or how they could be kind of digested a little bit more for anyone that's not familiar with any of those fancy words?
Yeah. No doubt.
I think, first of all, don't get at the beginning, don't get overwhelmed by Van Westendorp, for sure. It is, I think Dan can explain it better, but unless you really know what you're doing with it, it could be overwhelming.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming for sure. But I mean, all 3 of these are really tools in the toolbox when you're considering pricing. And conjoint is a little bit pricing and also just, product makeup in terms of what features and functionality do people want in your product, and what would that look like? And you can utilize it like that as well. So it could be different attributes based on any number of things, and then you ask people to select what makeup of those attributes would you want in your product, and against some other options as well. So it can be complex, but if you just take it for what it is, and it's not that bad. I mean, most of the complex stuff is being done in the back end with the different algorithms and things that are applied to it. But if you look at each one, like Van Westendorp essentially asks 4 questions around pricing, right? So let's say you want to know how much to price, name a product, any product. What would it be?
Handbag.
A Birkin bag.
A Birkin bag.
Okay, that might be a little bit tough.
That's the exception, I think, to that particular.
Yeah. Maybe let's choose like a more.
Here we go. An exclusive Question Pro plushie that has never been debuted before.
I like that. So you'd ask, how much would you buy this Question Pro plushie? But it's at like 4 different options. So the first one is like, at what price would you consider the product to be so expensive that you would not consider buying it? So how much is way too much for the plushie? Well, let's say it's, I don't know, let's someone says it's $100. That might be too much for them, right? And then there's another
It's one
series
of
of
a kind.
questions. Series of questions where essentially you get at what's too expensive, what's too cheap, what's expensive on the high side, and what's a cheap or good value. And then as you ask this to a number of respondents, you'll get the optimal price that people would pay for it. So it takes into all those, takes all those things into account rather. So that's another option. Another could be Garber Granger, where you're preloading, I think, about up to 5 different options in. So it could be
Okay.
$10, $20, $30, $40, $50, let's say. And then you ask them, like, would you consider buying this at $20? And if they say no, then it would ask a series of questions with those pricing options in there. So that way you get to know the optimal price, and then you can know like the demand curve as well, so you can see where those two things line up. So you know, if I increase my price, my demand might go down. So you'll find like an optimal point where those two lines intersect. So depending on what you're looking for, you can utilize those different methods. One, if you don't know the price at all, I'd probably use Van Westendorp. If you have some good pricing, or you want to find out how much more you could potentially charge, maybe do Garber Granger, and then use conjoint if you want to know the different features or attributes that you want to make up a product, and you can include price in there as well. So that could be one of those things. So those are like the three different, those 3 different types at a high level, I would say.
Okay,
And then,
so
go ahead.
How much would we think this is for? If the
put it in the chat. Let's see how much
let
this
us
guy's
know.
going
I mean,
for.
it's
pay for
it's
this
probably
one.
probably
He has a little T-shirt.
He's just a
probably
little guy.
pricey.
Oh, the T-shirt! I didn't even know that was a
Yeah.
thing. That's cute.
We'll be giving these away at Question Pro X Day.
Nice. So those
They
are
have
just
go.
free.
the real ones have smaller heads.
Oh, he just got a little dumber. It's okay. I'm just kidding.
Okay, so okay, Danny can recap. This is her show.
Well, just to recap, yes. So it's mainly just asking how much would you pay for something, what is too expensive, and how much can we kind of toe the line is essentially what I gathered from that. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah, that's essentially it. Yeah.
Okay. And so when it comes to designing these kinds of surveys, what tips or tricks would you maybe advise someone? Because I know that a lot of, and in the time that I've, obviously spent now in the market research space, the timing of these questions is always super crucial. If it's better before a product launch, during a product launch. I don't know if it's beneficial at the end of a product launch, because, by then it's already out there, bud. But
Yeah. Yeah, but you can, I would probably do some of these at the beginning, and that's where you'd want to, like, at least what price do you want to take it to market? And then you can use like Garber Granger later on down the line when you may have a price, but let's say you want to see how much you can increase it or what kind of discounts you would want to offer. So it could be any number of things that you'd want to use these question types for. But I would say definitely before you launch the product, you're going to need to come up with some price, whether that's a look at competitive pricing. It's based on your margins that you want to make, but you want to do these pricing studies to make sure that you're charging the optimal amount. So,
and you don't want to just do it once.
Yeah.
You want to definitely do it over time. I think that this goes hand in hand to another episode we could do about brand sentiment and doing a brand tracker over time. If you were to layer a pricing tracker and a brand tracker, that would be like optimal survey power.
Yeah, and I think you also want to like do it at different points in time based on like different market conditions, right? Like if you have some of these during COVID and you ask people like, how much would you pay for, I don't know, like toilet paper, right? That was like, no one could find it.
$50 for one roll.
It skyrockets. But if you're trying to sell one roll for $20 now, they're going to be like, yeah, right.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So there are like, you want to make sure that you're asking at different times. So, because there could be the different market conditions that help dictate it. But if like it's a pretty stable market and you want to ask the questions, like, by all means, I would do it just to make sure that you're charging the right amount for a particular product.
Well, there you go. This is the perfect segue into designing the surveys. So from what I've been able to gather, it's good to define the objectives and then select the survey type, formulate the questions, and then pre-test and then pilot.
Mhm.
So the first one is for defining objectives, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you're the subject matter expert here.
He
so-
is. We just heckle him.
Who me?
So yeah, I mean, it's basically just asking what it is that you want to know. Maybe if it's like the optimal price range, and how price sensitive your customers are. The biggest example I could maybe think in terms of relating it to real life is how people's sentiment is changing specifically for Chanel. Chanel has not quite been as innovative when it comes to its clothing, and people are starting to feel that the price isn't really justifying for the kind of hardware that it has, the type of leather that they're using. Very much so my own kind of niche, my own space, right? But we do have to relate it
Does
to the
someone
real
have a little Chanel crush?
But yeah, I mean,
That's a yes.
I think
just
that's a yes.
in the
That's a
fashion.
yes.
Okay, keep going.
But anywho, so it's just kind of interesting to see that there are other platforms such as social media that kind of have influence in these kinds of things as well, where people are kind of gathering and kind of come as a community and start discussing just the pricing in itself. And I don't know if that maybe affects anything, but maybe that could be a good objective for brands like Chanel.
Yeah. I mean, for Chanel, if they think, or there's consumer sentiment that they're falling off the market, like they can do research and figure that out pretty quickly, right? Like
Mhm.
obviously they can look at social media, what people are saying, but if they wanted to validate that and get that structured feedback, they can easily do, survey or interviews.
Quantitative
Maybe they
data.
are. Exactly. There you go.
Quantitative data. Wow. Man, she's picking up way faster than I am.
Bringing it back.
Yeah,
There we
I
go.
wasn't gonna say anything, but yeah.
But also,
Yes.
I think to that point, there is like probably, Dan, would you use different of the original surveys we talked about, like Conjoint, Van Westendorp, Garber Granger? If your objective was sentiment or repricing versus net new pricing, would you use different question types?
Yeah, but so if I didn't know my price at all, I'd use Van Westendorp.
Okay.
And even if I wanted to kind of gauge the market and see what that is like, I would probably still use Van Westendorp. You can use Garber Granger if you want to figure out like the optimal price, if you're charging too little, too much, and where that kind of sweet spot
But
is.
you almost need to be farther down the market.
Yeah, because you want to have some baselines. That's why you need to feed in those 5, or I think it's usually 5. Some people do more, some people do less of those different price points. So you want to have some gauge of where that's going to be at, because that's going to give you more reliable data. So you want to be further down. And then conjoint, I would use conjoint probably initially when I'm developing, if it's new features or functionality that you want in your product, I would use it then. Or if you're looking to upscale it or enhance it in any way and add different functionality in, I would utilize that, because that'll give you like, okay, based on these set of features that respondents have rated, these are like the optimal features to go with, and they make up like the best profile for my particular product. So you could use it at the beginning when you don't know, could use it in the middle if you're looking to, change the
Reevaluate.
product or enhance it.
Okay. Cool. So I guess that kind of goes with selecting the survey type, right?
Oh, I skipped ahead on your little.
No, that's good. I mean, it basically answers the second question that I had as a follow-up, which is great. You guys we're on the same wavelength now. But yeah, I mean, formulating the questions, I feel like that's where it kind of ties back into the quali-quant kind of thing. If you want something numerical, probably quantitative data. If you want something qualitative, maybe asking a general question like, hey, is $900 too much for a pencil? If you're Hermes, probably not. If you're, Bic, it might be.
That's funny. A $900 Hermes pencil. You heard it here first.
Nice.
They actually have a lot of stuff like that. I think there's like a $400 unicorn letter opener or something like that.
There we go. There we go.
Just because, huh?
Just
Dan,
because.
I would like that for my 5-year anniversary of Question Pro.
All right, I'll let Eric know. I'm sure I'll have no problem with doing that.
Okay, so I guess so you're propositioning all of these questions, right, to your audience and stuff, or your consumer or customer base, whatever you want it to be. And now that you have that kind of data, how would you want to kind of proceed with maybe like analyzing it? I know that there's a lot of AI integration nowadays, but what are some methods that you would recommend for anyone that's just having all this data that they don't know what to do with?
Yeah, I mean, for all of those question types that we mentioned, or those different methods, all of them have their own specific analysis techniques or algorithms that will be put on top of it or underneath it, however you want to describe it. So they'll all have like their standard outputs, and you'll get the price. So if you remember, like Van Westendorp is like those 4 different things, like too cheap,
Right.
too expensive, is it just right? Or, and there's another one I could look it up, but and it'll have
It
like all
sounds
those
like they
different
just
lines.
did Goldilocks. Like,
Oh yeah.
Maybe that's a new pricing.
She was the original market researcher.
She was. Okay,
Oh,
sorry,
yeah,
I just tried to do.
too cheap, too expensive, expensive, but it's on the high side where you might still buy it, or good value. Those were the different options. So those were so you can utilize those, and then you'll see all those different lines, and then where they intersect, there'll be some multiple prices there. And then on Garber Granger, it's the same thing. Like that gets applied. There's different calculations that get applied to it. So you'll see a graph that'll have like a demand curve, and then it'll have the price kind of trailing off. So you can see those different prices. And then conjoint has its own, it's its own beast with a bunch of different like best profile, worst profile. You can see utility scores. You can do market simulation. So based on a certain set of attributes, you can see how that would perform given your sample size. So lots of different things you can do there. But the analysis, I would say, at least in Question Pro, takes care of itself because we do all that for you. You don't have to like collect the data and figure like, oh, how am I going to actually analyze this? It's all done for you. And, it's pretty much automated at that point. So there's no issues there.
Awesome. Okay, well, I also wanted to kind of see if there was any way that we can kind of tie it back to any real life examples that you might have just kind of in the back of your head, where we saw this kind of survey or method, I guess, have some real life impacts, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anyone that I can share. I know we've done this a lot for our clients.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to get into a concrete example because a lot of the stuff is proprietary. I know there's everyone from mom and pop stores to Fortune 500 companies are utilizing these techniques. Probably more so on the Fortune 500 because they have the means and I think wherewithal to do it, I would say. But even if you're like a creator and you have a brand and you want to figure out like, hey, what is this? How much should I charge? Or you're interested in utilizing these different techniques, I would say, definitely let us know. Or there's plenty of resources online too, where you can look up some of these examples. But pretty like a standard one for conjoint at least is like, what is the optimal package for a TV, right? What size should it be? How many pixels should it be? Should it be 4K, 1080p? Should it be what price, at those different attributes? What would you want that to be? And then you can select those different options. So there's a lot that you can do there. Like that's, kind of an example, and you want to have probably 3 or 4 different attributes there. But yeah, so there's a lot of
we just did
ways you can utilize it.
I was just looking at a survey for a partner, and sound, it was the number one thing they wanted to pay, they were willing to pay for. And 36% of the respondents are going to buy a new TV in the next 6 months.
Really? Nice.
Yeah. They didn't do exactly pricing per se, but they were saying like, what are the features that are most like important to you, and when are you going to buy your next TV? Because I think that's going into a separate study around how much they're pricing their TV against
so they
others.
So they could have done a max diff exercise too, right? Where they asked like, what of these features, what do you like? What's the most important? What's the least important? And they get those. Or they could have even done it in a conjoint, right? Where just because you have all those different features inside of like a package where you have those, you can still see that like sound is like the highest utility, and that ranks the highest. So it's interesting. So that's a good example.
That was what that's why I was texting you earlier.
Now it's all coming full circle now. So
So I guess that's a pretty good example. Now, say for example, as another one that I'm going to throw at you, uh, let's do a hypothetical. Everyone has been complaining about subscription prices for things like Netflix and HBO and all that stuff now.
Mhm.
Nowadays, everyone kind of has cut the cord when it comes to cable, supposedly. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, that also just means that you're having like 10 different subscriptions. So, say for example, a consumer is starting to get tired of, paying $20 for something that was like maybe $8, $9 like a couple years ago. What is something that sentiment analysis for those kinds of things that would really force a company to kind of maybe draw back on some of the prices, or is it just based on more numerical data or sentiment, or how much influence do you think that has when it comes to pricing analysis?
Yes, I think all those things.
Yes, I think all those things. I also think that with some of it, this is where this is a little bit my soapbox, I think, about market research.
Sure.
Is market research gets thrown under the bus if state shareholders say they want to make more profits.
Mhm.
Right? Like you could do all the market research in the world, but then if they decide like, okay, we have enough of a cohort that's willing to pay X, we can make it this high because we'll still be profitable.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. So you're having to look at kind of what Dan was talking about, the economics of pricing with your pricing research. And unless you're telling a really good story, the market researchers research is just going to be like a stepping stone to profits, or it's going to just get thrown out. They're going to be
Yeah.
like, we want profits anyways.
Yeah, and I think one thing you've seen too, at least in the streaming, is all those streaming services were increasing their prices, right? But they said, okay, well, if you don't want to increase their prices, what are they going to do? They're going to put ads on it, right? Which people don't like either, but they'll pay like the $6, $7 and watch a few ads. So it is interesting. I think that even like, what's the alternative, right? So if they, let's say they cancel Netflix, they're still probably going to have like, I don't know what, Hulu or Max or these other Disney. And so they'll go somewhere else. So yes, Max could like lower their prices to get more people, but maybe that's not sustainable for them given their model. So there's so many different factors to take into account. Like even look how much Netflix pays for its shows and comedians and things, right? So they got to make that money back somehow. And so I think that's where they keep some of those, the prices where they're at, or keep going up with inflation as
Or
well.
then
So
they
there's
just
a
like
number.
make bundles, and I'm like, are we in cable again?
Right?
Have we gone backwards?
We're going back to
Yeah.
cable now. I mean, they do
Now
have
it's on your cell phone bill. Like I don't understand.
they
I know,
have
yeah,
the
now
what
it's
is it,
all
the
finite.
Disney, the HBO, and the Hulu bundle
Yeah,
now?
Hulu, yeah.
AT&T tries to also. We can have another webinar or call or whatever this shenanigan is that we're doing about UX design and how Disney does not understand it.
Oh my
Disney
goodness.
Plus is a terrible UX experience.
We should do that. We should do
Hulu in
something
there.
like that.
Once they added that, it's like, would you like a horror movie and would you like to watch Bluey all at the same time?
I know it is weird. It is weird to like go to Disney Plus and be able. I think like it should just be Disney princesses and that kind of
Right?
stuff.
No, and it's like, would you
It's
like
weird.
to watch Reno 911? And you're like, wait.
Wait, how do these things? Yeah.
Why are Deadpool and Bluey sitting next to
Yeah,
each
that's
other?
what I was thinking. Deadpool, out of all movies, should not be on Disney Plus.
Anyways, we could do a UX webinar at some point to talk about UX research.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
let's do
think
it.
we should.
Yeah.
Well, that was my hypothetical question there, but this type of topic I think is something that a lot of people might be interested in. At least in the niche of the internet that I'm in, I know a lot of people are starting out their own small businesses. They start off either with knitting or crocheting or little sculptures or what have you. Lots of jewelry for sure. See jewelry all the time on TikTok. If someone, for example, if I'm posting like a clip of this webinar over on TikTok and they're watching this, haha, and they want to know how can I start off and just kind of determining pricing, I think maybe like some sage advice for them would be really appreciated.
That's you, Dan.
You want to like
I don't have any sage
real,
advice.
no, I think like real quick and dirty, just
Yeah.
post something and then say, how much would you, ask the audience, like, how much would you charge for this? And you're going to get, if you're to the level where you have like a product you're pitching, you can probably get enough responses to see like, okay, an average number is, $4 or $5, whatever that might be from those. If you want it real quick and dirty, if you want to like bump it up a notch and do some research around it, some sound research, you can, utilize one of these online platforms like Question Pro to do a quick study. It's not that complicated. If you have the product, the questions there, you can easily type in the question, the different prices that you're
so
thinking
many
about charging.
templates that you could just go make like the templates are there, guys.
Yeah. And then the reporting is easy. You can clearly see like what's price. So to start out, I would do the first thing I mentioned, and then as you get a little bit more in the business and sophisticated, I would take it up a notch and do it. Do a quick pricing study. It's not overly complicated given the tools that we have.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that Dan is hitting on is ask the question.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Like if you're not asking your audience how much they want to pay for something, or if you're not asking your customers how much they're going to pay again for something, then you're not doing it right.
Crystal Sage advice is just ask the dang question.
That's like phase one. Like
ask the question. Yeah.
Do you think maybe there's like this invisible wall that I feel like a lot of businesses maybe sometimes come across where they feel like they can't really ask their customer-based questions? Is that something that you guys have maybe come across?
I don't think so. Not that I've seen. I think there's in some industries, like there's some regulatory factors where they can't ask different things, but I think most of the time they're pretty adept to like ask the question. I think it's kind of ingrained, especially if you're in research.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. I mean, honestly, this was a pretty informative episode. I definitely learned a lot of things, in my niche of the world, or the internet where I live in. There is a lot of people that do often have these kinds of discussions. Like one of my favorite examples was the shrinkflation that is happening a lot in cosmetics and skincare, where products. There's one in particular. I won't name names. There was one in particular where a year ago it was like this tiny stick was the mini size. And they were selling it for like around $12. And then nowadays, the mini size is now the actual size of the product itself, and they bumped it up to around $30.
What?
Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, the product that they had before was like this really big stick, and like no one could ever in a million years finish that much product. And so they decided that the main product itself was just going to be the tiny thing.
Because if you can never finish it, you'll never buy another one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those.
But are you still
things.
buying it at $30?
No.
Totally not.
Yeah.
That's how they lose the business.
Yeah,
But
see?
I mean, that's also a good lesson, I think, for other people as well. You have to really know what your demographic is. If you're a product known for being maybe on the more price-friendly side, and all of a sudden you're starting to charge, luxury prices, you're, maybe not gonna do as well as you used to.
But then you bring a good point, actually, because then they can do the research and see how many people are still buying it or not buying it, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're one of three people and you're not buying it, but two others are, they're still making
money.
significantly more than what they were, right? So, and even who knows how much they're actually paying for that, and they're probably making more margins even if they just sell one as opposed to like the three.
That's what happens with the streaming.
I know. Yeah, but the streaming's got to level out somewhere. Like it is a bit ridiculous, I think.
Yeah, $20 almost for one subscription.
They're all cheap enough to where it's like you look at the end of the day and you're like, why do I have 10 different streaming services? Like it's so stupid.
Go back to cable.
I'm
Dan's over
guilty.
here just trying to have his NFL ticket, guys.
No, I do have that. I had to buy that. So
I know you did.
and see, with that, I needed to buy YouTube TV because there's some games that aren't on Sunday ticket. So
Oh my gosh.
it's a
All
whole
the
deal.
stuff.
Anyway, all the stuff.
Alrighty. Well, this was a pretty good episode. I mean, I learned quite a bit, and I thank you guys for your time and for your information and all that good stuff. I hope that anyone watching, was able to learn something helpful. Maybe also kind of vent in the chat there if you're also sad about the Netflix pricing and the subscriptions and all that. Also, how much would you guys pay for our plushie? Let
You
us
should
know.
come to Question Pro X Day, and you can get one for free.
And what's awesome about it as well? If you use code MRX Unplugged, you get 100% off your registration.
There we go.
And you get a free plushie with a smaller head.
With the smaller head.
This is a prototype.
But yes, please come to X Day. It's going to be a great time. It's happening on October 3rd. Yes, we know about the Mean Girl references. I've made quite a few myself. It's happening in Austin, Texas at the Thompson Hotel. We have tons of information on it on our page. So yeah, I hope to see you guys there and hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all.